Good day everyone and welcome back to my little channel. Yes, the title of the thing kinda explains itself. The hypocrite talking to the hypochonder. And yes, that does mean that I think AJ Plus is a hypocrite. After all, they talk about how slavery is a bad thing, but they get funded by a country that has no problem with slavery. And yes, I think BLM is a hypochonder because they talk about problems whilst ignoring real problems, but trying to push the narrative that the problem they talk about is the real one. And I'm going to show you why that is not true. Or at least I'm going to try to. You might disagree with me. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this movie.
Every 28 hours in this country, a black person is murdered by security officers, police officers, or vigilantes.
Okay, so this is the very first piece of bullshit there is out there. So one black person gets killed by the cops every 28 days. You know what? I'm not going to argue those statistics. I'm 100% willing to believe that is correct. Okay, if that's correct, then that's a problem. Well, yes it is. I won't deny that either. I mean, people getting killed by law enforcement is never a good thing. The question, however, becomes, were these justified killings? But Black Lives Matter doesn't answer that question because they don't look into that question. So there's another question. If police officers and law enforcement and blah, blah, blah kill black people is such a big problem, then why don't we hear them talk about black people killing other black people? Because roughly, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, rounded down, 6 black people a day, and that's rounded down, die at the hands of other black people. So don't get me wrong, but yes, 1 in 28 days is too many. So how is 6 per day sound to you? And I know there are Black Lives activists who keep claiming that, well, once the police stop killing us, we will stop killing us too. Why do you think that the police has so much interaction with black people? Could it be because they are overly represented in crime? Well, maybe. But yeah, it does get a little bit more different than that still, because according to The Guardian, who keeps counting people getting killed by the cops for whatever reason, almost 1 black person a day is getting killed by the cops in 2015. Almost 1. So that's not 1 every 28 days, 1 a day. So maybe those 28 were innocents being shot, fair enough. Still sounds a little bit off, but fair enough. Shit happens. I think 1 a day is too much. 1 every 28 days is too much. Don't get me wrong. But now the kicker. 1 black person a day gets killed by the cop if I round it up. Almost 2 people get killed by the cops that are white if I round it up. If I wouldn't round it up, it would be 1.59 blah 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 blah. So yeah, white people get killed by cops more than black people. And yes, white people do have more homicide than black people. But then again, only comparatively, because white people are roughly at 55% of the total homicide, where black people are roughly at 43% of the total homicide. So yeah, more white people are in the killing business than black people. The thing is, however, that black people are only 13% of the country. So if 13% commits almost as much crime as, let's say, 70%, don't you think those 30% are overrepresented in the crime statistics? Why doesn't Black Lives Matter address this?
There are more people in prisons and jails today than there were enslaved in this country.
Yeah, the prison industry is a weird one in America. It really is. But let's go back to the number of people that were enslaved in the USA. Okay, roughly 380,000 black slaves were in the USA during the enslaving period. So yeah, that's a lot, 380,000. But then at the same time, before the black slavery thing really got big, more than 300,000 Irish were slaves in America, as were Germans and Finnish people and Polish people, but I can't really find the accurate numbers on that. I mean, I can find numbers on them, but they are slightly contradictory. But at that time, slavery was something that stopped after your indentured period was finished. So let's say that was 7 years according to the Bible. So what changed? What made indentured servitude chattel slavery? Well, here's the funny thing. The first owner of a chatteled slave, so a black slave that was slaved for the rest of his life, was a black guy. The black guy was officially first sold into slavery himself as Antonio or Anthony Johnson. After 7 years, he became a free man, as was normal in that day and age. And he got a bit of money, he got a bit of land, and he was out to set his own life, living the American dream, so to speak. Now, he himself got some black slaves. And again, indentured servitude. So after 7 years, these slaves were supposed to be set free. But Antonio didn't agree. So he started a court case claiming that he was entitled to keep his black slave. And he won. And because of that, black chattel slavery became a thing. Yes, it started by black people, not by white people. Because white people still followed the church's law. Well, after this one, of course, they didn't. And indentured servitude stopped being a thing. Well, for white people, indentured servitude stayed, but for black people, it stopped being a thing. So black people became chattel slaves. And, okay, black slaves were owned by people. Now, who owned the most slaves, do you think? Well, obviously, white people, because white people were the richest. Well, again, no. In all fairness, the first chattel slave owner was a black man. Most white people didn't really care too much about slavery. So, yeah, okay, they could have and own white slaves, but still most of the black-owned slaves were owned by blacks. Free black people owned slaves roughly 3 times as often as white slave owners did. Well, that's not true, as white people did, sorry. And black people owned black slaves on average, where white people stayed with white slaves on average. So yeah, I know the stories we see in the movie of black slaves. You remember that in 1920, in America, they decided it is bad to show white slaves in movies. And since then, there hasn't been a movie with a white slave in it. Funny how that goes. We change the narrative by changing the story, and with that we pretend that reality changes. Reality hasn't changed though. Most slaves were white, most black slaves were owned by black slave owners, and black slave owner started chattel slavery. Why is that not being mentioned? I mean, doesn't it count? I'm sorry, I got sidetracked a bit. I was talking about slavery when all you said that there are more people incarcerated now than there were ever slaves. Okay, so let's take that number of black slaves, which was at around 380,000. And in 1860, let's say, no, you know what, we'll take 1870, because after 1870, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, so no more slavery. America had a total of 31 million people living there. No, sorry, 38 million. So roughly 1% of the population was black slave, because 300,000 is 1% of 38 million. So how many people are incarcerated now? And according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, oh, I butchered that, roughly 0.9% of adults are incarcerated now. There are around 2.2 million adults in prison. Yes, in raw numbers, that's more. I mean, 300,000 or 2.2. But percentage-wise, it's less. So which one of the two are we going to follow? Are we going to follow the raw numbers or the percentage? Funny enough, though, if we do admit that white slavery was a thing too, then no, there would have been percentage-wise more people enslaved than incarcerated. Clearly. Wow, I've been busy for more than 9 minutes and we haven't even scratched the introduction there. I'm sorry, I have to curtail myself a bit.
Alicia, everybody's seen the hashtag at this point. They've seen the slogans and the protests. What is Black Lives Matter and how did it come about?
Ooh, let me answer that one. Black Lives Matter is a movement trying to victimize black people so that they get more. This is why Soros is putting millions into it so that the attention goes to that instead of the real issues that we face today.
Black Lives Matter is a project that's designed to celebrate the humanity, the brilliance, and resilience of black people in a world that devalues black life.
Wow, I wasn't even close to what you said. But then again, what you said is bullshit, so there is that.
And we use Black Lives Matter as a place where folks can come together online and offline to collaborate, to strategize, to build power together.
Yeah, to come together and to organize against that terrible oppression brought on by politicians and the police and other white people. I mean, it's not about segregation at all. And yeah, no, you want a safer society. Unless, of course, that society still has police because, hey, you know, the only good cop is a dead cop and all that. Yeah, sure.
We've seen the hashtag take off, but we've also seen spins on that hashtag, like all lives matter. What do you think about that?
Well, as a good humanist, I would say, yes, all lives matter. Black, white, yellow, Spanish, whatever. Yeah, all lives matter. That's a good thing.
Well, I think that it points towards a utopian reality that we don't live in right now.
I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're saying there. Do you say that all lives matter is a good thing, or that it's a utopian thing? So it should be a good thing, but it's not a good thing right now.
So when you look at what's going on in the streets right now and the protests that have been basically nonstop for a couple of months, do you think that this is the birth of a new national movement? And if so, what is the movement?
Well, yes, it is the birth of a new movement, I would say. And it's a movement that tries to play the victim card and getting strong on playing the victim card. And they're actually getting strong on playing the victim card, even though that card does not really belong to them.
Young people have decided that enough is enough and that it's no longer time for slow incremental change or for compromise. And that what we need right now are radical shifts in our social system, in our economic system, and in our criminal system. And we need folks who have been in the movement for a long time to really be supporting their capacity to win.
Yeah, no, it's mostly a movement that's based on lies, and they keep perpetuating those lies so that people will keep following them.
Do you think that Al Sharpton should actually step aside, not be in front of the camera, and maybe put forward a younger face?
It's a different moment today, and so the needs are different, the conditions are different, and so it's really important that leaders and elders in particular are listening to what's changed and listening to what's needed from those who are directly and mostly impacted.
I love how you are trying to not give a clear answer. But your answer is yes, they need to step aside because we need to have the spotlight. And with we, obviously, you are one of those people. It's not about equality. It's not about the people. It's not even about black people because, hey, they get killed by themselves way more than any police officer does. That's all not the issue. The issue is, look, I'm in the limelight. Step aside, Al Sharpton.
Can you name some of the younger people who are just as involved that we might not know about?
Folks like the Black Youth Project, folks like Millennial Activists United in Ferguson and Tribe X in Ferguson and St. Louis, Hands Up United in Ferguson, the Dream Defenders, Dignity and Power Now in Los Angeles.
Or a lot of black people who are no longer standing behind Black Lives Matter. Mind you, most people that do support Black Lives Matter aren't black. Most black people do not support it because, well, it's lies, isn't it? Don't take my word for it. Listen to this guy.
I'm promoting this All Lives Matter movement. I'm gonna tell you why. Because it's all this Black Lives Matter movement only promotes racism, and now they encouraging black people to go kill white people because they want white people to feel what we felt 400 years ago. Newsflash, was you living 400 years ago? No. Was those, you know what I'm saying? Was you born 400 years ago? No. So how you gonna let something in the past that you never existed, that you was never born in, affect how you live your life today, having that much influence over you today? All lives matter. That police officer that got killed by that black man because that black man listened to what y'all was saying by going out and killing white people. That police officer's life mattered. That 9-year-old girl in Ferguson, Missouri that got shot in the head while she was doing her homework in a drive-by shooting that none of y'all protested, her life mattered.
Now, I could find more movies of black people speaking out against Black Lives Matter. And I could post them all here, but this movie is too long as it is. So, yeah, open your eyes. There are too many black people speaking out against Black Lives Matter. And don't think this is because of the Dallas shooting, because this guy recorded his in 2015, end 2015, I think August.
So there's obviously so much momentum right now for the movement, and the news cycle is very much tuned into what's going on. But where does it go from here?
Yeah, the way forward will be more damage. It will be more people dying. It will be more violence. And the worst part is Black Lives Matter knew this. I mean, people knew this. We saw this happening already a year ago. We saw this happening 2 years ago when they were just new. Look at what happened in Ferguson just after Black Lives Matter started. There were black people trying to defend the neighborhood against black people who were rioting. And yeah, that's what we see more and more and more. Look at what happened in Dallas. Look at what happened in Milwaukee just a few weeks ago. And yes, that's what Black Lives Matter does. It makes criminal behavior acceptable.
Making sure that we are really moving towards pushing for our demands to be adopted at the federal level, at the state level, and at the municipal level.
Demands like less police officers in predominantly black areas. You know, the areas where most crime is being committed. The area where most people, being black people, are being killed. Not by the police, mind you, but by other black people. But hey, we don't want the police there. I mean, we don't want them to create safety for black people. We want them out of there.
That there is adequate and consistent data that is collected across the country about police killings and officer-involved shootings. Right now, police departments individually can decide what they track and what they don't, how they report and how they don't. So we need a consistent standard for that.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, on this I partially agree. I mean, yes, we should keep track of what the police officers are doing. And I also know that most states in America already demand that their officers wear that, what do you call it, camera, dashboard camera, but then on the body. Body cam, that's the one. Hey! So yeah, there is that. And we should look at the evidence that is being collected. Unfortunately, though, in the cases where we do look at these evidences, unfortunately, a lot of police shootings are accidental, or rather they're not so much accidental, but they are not to blame on the officers. Not on all, mind you, but there have been police officers sent to jail for killing black people in the line of duty, and they should have been. So no one is saying that black people should be shot and it doesn't matter, but in a lot of cases black people being shot, yeah, it's not really something the police officer could have done differently.
Another demand that young people are moving in this moment is that there be accountability measures attached to that data.
Yeah, but the thing is, there already are. So you're basically asking for something that's already implemented.
And so if a police department shows a pattern of discriminatory policing, that they wouldn't be receiving federal funding, in other words, our tax dollars, to promote and continue racism.
But what if those officers have to deal with black people because they are predominantly available, because they commit so much crime? Is it then still racism to speak out against those criminals? I mean, police deals with criminals. They don't deal with race. You make it sound as if they deal with race. You don't want to deal with criminals.
There's been tons of peaceful protests all over. There's also been some incidents of vandalism and things getting a little more violent. What tactics do you advocate and where do you draw the line?
We advocate those types of tactics that really shake up the comfort level.
Yeah, to shake up the comfort level. So if you're in discomfort because we kill people or we burn places down, Yeah, that's okay, because that's what we try to do, to get you out of your comfort zone. You feel safe? We don't want you to feel safe.
What do you say to what do you say to critics who say, smashing property windows and storefronts and some looting is actually counterproductive to the movement?
My response to that would be, do we have the same level of outrage when a window gets broken as we do when a young black person is killed in our communities? And if we don't, there's a real disparity there, and we need to figure out what that is.
Yeah, guys, you heard her say it. When will we stop telling people that looting is bad? As soon as people recognize that black people have it bad because they get killed. Mostly by black people, mind you. But yeah, you should speak out against that outrage. And if you do not speak out against that outrage, well, fuck you, we're going to keep looting. This is a spokesperson for Black Lives Matter. You heard her say these things. And yeah, okay, maybe I translated them a little bit, and maybe I'm doing too much of mansplaining and white-splaining here. Fair enough, I can live with all of that. But none of what I said isn't true. The problem with Black Lives Matter is that it's the lies that count. Reality has nothing to do with it. But they will push the narrative as far as they can push it. And yes, people have died because of this. Not just cops. They've killed non-police officers as well. Or at least they destroyed a lot of property in Milwaukee. How much longer can we stay silent? How much longer can we let this happen? I mean, you gotta love the fact that Al Jazeera, is speaking to Black Lives Matter because, well, I mean, don't you just feel that Black Lives is so mistreated and so unjustly measured? And who's doing the talking? Well, Al Jazeera, together with Black Lives Matter. You know Al Jazeera? Al Jazeera is being basically sponsored by the Sheikh of Qatar, the leader of Qatar. You know Qatar, that country that this year got a warning to stop with their slavery because they're using slaves to build stadiums so that they can have the World Cup of football, well, soccer as you in America call it. That Qatar, that Al Jazeera, the ones that are actually promoting slavery in their own image. But, well, yeah, no, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, look at that. Oh, it's a good movement. Yeah, no, they've been mistreated. Yeah. Bullshit meets bullshit. Hypocrisy meets hypochonders. I'm sorry. Anyway, as always, criticism is more than welcome. And yeah, like, share, subscribe if you feel inclined. And I hope to see you all next time.